computer. All right, guys. So we're going to be tackling a LinkedIn HTML challenge. Again, we just want to recreate a LinkedIn profile layout using the tools that we've learned for the past couple of days, namely HTML and CSS. All right, so I've already forked this over and cloned it down to my machine. So I have my files ready to go here. So again, our task here is to kind of mimic a layout, and this can give us practice with identifying key like structural components of HTML and how to apply those styles with CSS. So I actually have a sample LinkedIn profile up here. So this is Bill Gates' profile. I'll make that a little larger. So again, the task here is going to be pick out the relevant boxes and kind of focus on the larger boxes and then focus on the smaller boxes within those boxes. When I say boxes, I just mean like, core structural components, whether it be rows or sections or columns. That's what I'm trying to pick out here. So I'm actually going to try something here. I'm not sure how well this will work, but I'm going to try to draw on my screen. Let's see if this works. Okay, I guess I can draw. How do I clear? Clear. Okay, so I'm just gonna, again, try to pick out the boxes here. So looking at this page, I see one or maybe two boxes here. So one would be the box up here. Not sure how, does that render on your screen? Do I need to make that thicker? See if I can make that a little thicker. Oh, we can make boxes even, all right, even better.
Could you possibly make it a darker color for more contrast?
Makes sense. Let's go with a blue. Or let's go with red. All right, so we could draw boxes here. So I could highlight sections. That looks much better. So let's try to identify what components I'm going to need to create here. So one is going to be this box up here. So this is going to be my search or navigation bar. The second would be this entire box down here. All right, and then within that, we're going to have smaller boxes. So we're not going to get into every box, but just trying to pick out some of our boxes. Within this second box down here, it looks like I have one column over here and then another column over here. So the reason I'm spotting columns instead of rows is because notice how this box, this smaller box here, is not really aligned with anything out here. So again, it's all about alignment. So these two boxes that I've highlighted in green, these don't have the same height, right? That is why I'm not picking out rows or like a smaller row within this box. It looks to me that there's a clear division. Why can't I scroll on this page? Interesting. All right, so I guess I can't scroll while I'm drawing, but yeah, so notice that there's a column. One column kind of ends down here, but the other one keeps going. So that's why I picked out columns here. So I guess I'll go back to drawing. Sorry, Zoom is a little bit annoying. I reset everything. All right, so we had two boxes here. So I'm going to try to do that first. So I'm going to highlight the two large boxes. There's a red there. Let's go for a different color. Let's go orange. That's contrasting enough. And this is my second box down here. Everything, basically my main content is going to be down here. So I'm going to try to mimic this in my HTML. So to get this going here, I guess I can't retain those. Fortunate. Okay, so let's create an HTML document. I'm going to use one of my shortcuts here. I have a template here that basically creates the bare bones HTML file that I need. I don't want a script right now. Basically, we have our main sections. We have the head section, the body section, also our HTML section down here. All right, some additional subsections that I have in my body. I have a nav section, a main section, and a footer section. These don't really matter too much. Essentially what nav, main, and footer are just glorified divs, right? We've talked about the div tag. These are the same things as a div tag. They have a little more definition. So like if a web crawler or something was reading your HTML file, they will be able to kind of pick out your main content versus your navigation. So that's why I have nav. Again, you can use divs. It's going to do exactly the same thing. All right, so here I'm going to actually, in my nav section, I'm going to use this as my top box. So this box up here, that's going to be my nav box. Again, this is a smaller box or smaller section within our body. Right. So let's break this down into smaller pieces. Let's see if drawing works well enough. All right. So within this upper box here, I have, I'm spotting a couple other sections. One is this search bar here, and then everything else looks to be in a different box. The reason I'm picking this out is because there's a divider right here. If I actually shrink my window, if I can go back to that. If I shrink my window, notice how the gap remains and those sections kind of stay together, right? They're not stretching, like these icons are not stretching with respect to each other. The search bar is not stretching. So my eyes are picking out two boxes here. One is the search box and the other is basically other navigation links. So I'm going to create those two boxes first. So in my nav, I'm going to create a div and I'm going to create another div. And right now I'm just going to put some text into hold some be a placeholder, I guess is what I'm going for. Search box, and then this can be, I'll call it icons box. All right, so we're going to do this incrementally, and I guess I got to clear my drawings all the time. We're going to do this incrementally. So let me actually fire up this web page and see what it looks like right now. It's not going to be too interesting. All right, so there we go. All right, so this is what my page looks like right now. Obviously, not anywhere close to what we want it to do. Notice that search box and icons box, they're actually stacking on top of one another. That's not quite what I want. So this is the default behavior for an HTML page. It's just going to stack things vertically. That's how browsers choose to interpret your HTML. All right, but I actually want these next to each other. So I have a couple options here. One, if we go back to our introduction, we could use a span tag. So span tags are inline elements. So remember, div elements are block level, but spans can share vertical space, being inline elements. So if I do this, let's see if that changes it. There we go. So now they're next to each other. So that seems to work. We're making some progress, again, very small progress. Let's try to jazz this up a bit. So I'm going to give these boxes actually an ID. I'll say, we'll call this nav icons. And we'll call this nav search box. All right, the reason I'm giving these boxes is so I could kind of apply some styles to them. Right now, I don't have any styles here. So let me add a style sheet. I'm going to call it styles.css for simplicity. And then we get to actually link it to our HTML. I actually kind of cheated here. My template already has that link. So basically, we need to add a link tag to the header, to the head section. Relationship will be style sheet, type will be text CSS, and then we have an href pointing to our style sheet. Okay, so I'm gonna give some styling here. So what can I call on here? Luke McCaleb, how can I actually target this individual item with my CSS? What will my selector need to be?
Can you go back to the HTML for a sec?
Sorry, your audio is a bit low on my end.
Can you go back to HTML?
Yep. I want to target this section or this span in my HTML. How would I do that in my CSS?
You'll use the associated ID that's right next to it, Nav Search Box.
Sorry, your audio is still very low on my end. What I think Luke was maybe saying was we need to use a hashtag and then do Nav Search Box. So again, we have an ID here, right? ID selectors start with a hashtag in CSS. So the name of my ID is Nav Search Box, and I use the hashtag there. Now I'm going to give it some style. Right now, I'm just going to go with background color just to identify it a little easier. Let's go with a nice blue violet. And likewise for my nav icons box, I'll give it a background color. Something contrasting, let's go with coral. All right, let's see how that looks. Okay, so these boxes look like that. Let me get Bill Gates, his page over here so we don't keep switching. Let that load. All right, there we go. So compare these two sections. Notice there's a gap here. So we need to kind of get a gap going. Also, we want to center everything. And this is where flexbox is going to come into play. So flexbox allows us to center content very easily. So flexbox is something that we introduced yesterday. Let's add a flexbox. So here, I'm going to target my nav here, and that has an ID of body nav. So that should be simple enough. So that's essentially my parent container that's going to have that flexbox display. So if I do body nav display, I'm going to set the flex. So this is how we use flexbox, display flex. And now I could do something like justify content center. So now every child element is going to be centered. So let's see if that works. There we go. So we got this center. Great. Let's actually give a background color here to see how much space we have. Let's go with, I'm going to run out of colors here shortly, with dark khaki. Okay, so notice that my div or my nav takes up the entire horizontal space because it's a block level element. However, my spans only take up how much space they need to. So we're making some progress there. Let's add a few more things. One thing I'm going to add is to my body section. I'm going to reduce the margins down to 0. The reason I want to do this is if we look at our actual LinkedIn page, notice that there's no gap at the very edge. So if I do that, hopefully, yep, there we go. We have no more gap there. Any questions so far about what we're trying to do or anything we've added for CSS or HTML? Okay, so making small but steady progress.
I think Ty has a question, but we can't hear you.
Okay, thanks, Donna. Ty,
Hey, can you hear me?
your question here?
Is my audio coming through now?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So I remember you showed me the little like greater than star symbol that would like apply rules to items within. But in this case, we're not using that, but the justify content had that effect. Is it just some things do apply to items within the body and some other rules don't? Is it just?
Yeah, so Ty's question is, there's a combinator with an, I guess, a less than symbol or greater than symbol. This is some syntax you'll see with CSS. What this is saying is every single element, so that's what the star says, every single element that is a descendant of body nav should take on whatever style I put in here. So this, again, will target every descendant. But yes, flexbox is a little different. Flex, if you set flex to, I guess, a section, it's automatically going to apply some display properties, in this case, justify content. It's going to actually apply it to the children. So it's something, yeah, that's a little different. Normally, traits won't be passed down unless they're textual components. So yeah, we could do something like this and try to maybe do justify content or do some centering, like text align. But yeah, flexbox already kind of automatically knows that we want to work with children. Okay, so we're this far. Let's make some more progress here. So I want to add some padding to my box down here. So we'll go padding of, let's go 8 pixels. All right, got some space. That looks good. But there's another thing I need to accomplish. Now there's a gap here that kind of, the space gets eaten as I shrink it. So I kind of want to add that gap in. Maybe I'll do that a bit later. That's something to keep in mind. All right, let's try to space out these boxes. So notice that they're snugly next to each other versus they need to have this gap and kind of be aligned to some width. Let's try to accomplish that. So going back to my HTML, let me slide this over. All right, so we have these 2 boxes. I'm actually going to, let's see, what do I want to do here? Let's go to our resource, because resources are great. And again, I use this all the time. Raphael says he uses all the time. I've not found any better resource. So complete the guided flexbox should be your first result. These visuals, again, really help me a lot. So what I want to do is kind of scan this page and find a way to separate items. So we have justify content and we picked center, but we might want to do something like space between. So space between is going to put your boxes on the very left and very right, and then add any extra space in between. So maybe space between might accomplish this. Let's try that. So if I go here, add space between. Does that change anything for us? Okay, notice that search box got pushed all the way to the left, icons box to the very right. That is looking like what we want, but they're a little too far. So this is where I'm going to introduce a new box. So initially in my diagram, I didn't really identify an extra box here. So this entire thing looks like it's in one larger box. So we have two small boxes, but that's going to be in one intermediate box. Let's just add a box in there. If I do div, I'm going to slide these in there. All right, so this div can be ID equals navbox. And then I want to constrain the width of navbox. So let's go up here. Again, if you guys have any questions, please stop me. All right, so this is called navbox. Let's give it a width. I'm just going to guess what the width is. We'll adjust it whenever we feel like it. Let's guess it's 800 pixels wide. All right, so that squished all this. The reason this got squished is because flexbox only applies to immediate children. It doesn't trickle down to grandchildren. So what we're going to actually want to do here is add another display of flex, and then this can be justify contents space between, versus this would be center.
Your
I want
line 16 in your HTML needs to be a closed div. It's an open div.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks for catching that. But yeah, so I changed a couple things. Now my body nav has a justified content of center. The reason being is because I want the nav box. Again, the nav box, if we look here, I have too many windows. The nav box is the item that I've chose to put here. So essentially this is nav box. And then within that, I have two smaller boxes. This is my Nav Search Box. And then this is my icons box. All right, so that, again, just breaking a bigger box into smaller boxes. So the orange box is my entire nav box that's centered on my page. And then the green box and blue box, that is space between. That is some CSS styles that we're applying here. Okay, let's keep going. So looking at that, what do we have? Apparently my computer has stopped working. Annotations. Go here. All right, there we go. Notice that we got the separation we wanted. We got the gutters. So left and right have some padding. That is because my entire box up here has a width, or maybe probably a max width eventually. All right, let's start adding some more items. So my icons box has a bunch of icons in it. So let's just create some divs for that. So this can be an icon. I don't have the icons on hand right now. Maybe make this a span instead, span. Again, I'm just putting text for placeholders. Obviously, we'll fill this in with actual images once we get a chance. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so these are going to be our icons. Obviously, that's text right now, but it looks like it's growing correctly. All right, let's focus on the search box. So again, this can be more boxes. Within the search box, we have individual components. We have this icon here, and then we also have an input. So I'm going to break that down further. Again, it's just kind of whittling it down smaller and smaller. So here I have a span.
Ankur, is there a general rule of thumb for using a flexbox as an item as opposed to spans here? Like, would there be any advantage for your icons that you're making right now to be done as a flexbox?
You mean these right here? Sorry, I didn't catch that, Morgan. But yeah, we're just using span elements so that it could be inline as in next to each other.
Yes.
You can adopt a flex style in here. So any of these items that are spans, you can display them as flex and kind of control their children. So right now I am not applying any flex styles because I'm just putting them next to each other. But if I did want to add something like justify content, that's where display flex would come into play for the parent. But again, these can be divs, these can be spans. The reason I chose spans is because, again, I want everything on the same line. But you can make them div and also change your flex flow, for example, and make that row. And that would accomplish the same thing here. All right, so we have our icon box in our search box. And then this will be our actual search input. Let's actually just make that an input. So input will be how's that look? Okay, making progress. So we got the search bar. We could type anything. Obviously, it's not going to work. The purple thing here is going to be this icon, this LinkedIn icon. We'll do all this later. I'm trying to get all my boxes going. All right, so I'm pretty satisfied with what I have here. Let's try shrinking this window. All right, yeah, notice that flexbox automatically handles the proper eating of that space. So if the window is wide enough, the left and right gutters kind of shrink. Once you hit that critical width of hitting your flexbox or your box size, it's going to start eating the space in between. And that is because we set this styling of space between. It's saying all the space should go between elements and will eat space as needed. And that's what flexbox, again, is automatically doing for us. It's dynamically adjusting the size without us having to do anything too complicated.
I have a question. So you chose to do the spans on the icons. Since span is kind of non-dimensional, is that going to cause a problem later on if we try and make those clickable objects? Like, because each one's going to have their own like directed link, right? So using a span is going to be a kind of a hindrance to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, you might be right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something we might need to tackle. These have like different heights. Let's say icon A, icon B are different heights. The question is, will they kind of be weirdly aligned? Yeah, we'll maybe need to make changes.
Okay.
But yeah, let's kind of move on from our search bar. So I'm pretty happy with what we have here. Again, styling is going to be get the right icon, get the right icons here. I'm going to do that last. I just want to get my other content going here, so we could make the biggest strides first. All right, so I'm done with my top box here, my nav box. I'm going to move on to my main box down here. So looking at this, again, breaking it down into boxes. Let me try my fancy drawing. Okay, so now we're focused on this box down here. So this orange box is going to be basically my largest outer box. Within that, as we talked about earlier, I'm seeing two columns. There's one column here, a green box that continues down. And then the second one is, let's put that in blue, this column over here. All right, so we're going to divide the big box into two columns. And within each column, we have additional boxes. So it should be my last color, hopefully, pink. Notice there's a box here, which is the main profile section, introduction. We also have an about box. So there's a bunch of boxes stacked vertically in this column. And likewise, in this column, we have additional boxes. All right, so hopefully we kind of keep that mental picture. Unfortunately, I can't keep the drawing up on one screen. It's going to trickle over to my next screen, which I don't want. So let me clear those. Probably I could save drawings, but I'm not going to get that complicated. So let's tackle that.
Just thinking, what if you just took a screenshot?
I guess I could take a screenshot, but we'll just try to hopefully mentally remember those boxes. Maybe a good mental exercise to pick out the boxes from our screen. So first thing, largest box will be, I'm going to create that as a div. We'll give that an ID of content box. All right, and then within that, we had two other boxes that were columns. So I'm going to create a, let's go with a div this time. All right, so it's going to be one column. We'll call it main profile. And then the second column was just extra. I'm not even sure what's in the second column, but we'll just say extra info. All right, so these are my two columns I'm creating. Let's take a look at what they look like right now. Maybe content box will get a width. So let me do that quickly. We have content box will be a width of 800, matching what I had before. And then we also have body main. So I'm going to give this a flex display because I want to center my content box. So again, we do it to the parent. So the parent takes on the flex box. And then we can do justify content center. So that will center the content box within main box. So that should center it. And then we have a width for content box. Let's take a look at this. Okay, there we go. So notice that we have main profile and extra info. Let's actually colorize one of these items. So content box can have a background color. Let's go with dark orchid. Nice sounding color name. All right, so this is my content box. Obviously, it looks like the width is not taking effect, but also notice that these items are stacked, right? I have main profile and then extra info on top of each other. But my goal is to have two columns. This would be my content box, or my, what do I call it? Main profile would be this column, and then extra info would be this column. So again, this is where flexbox makes things, really easy. All we need to do here is we can change the flex flow. So I'm going to add a display for my content box of flex, and then there's flex flow. By default, the flex flow is rows, as in you go 1, 2, 3 on top of each other. But if you change it to flex flow, now you can do row. So row is going to say put everything on the same row rather than making them stacked. Is that what I want? See? Yep, there we go. So notice that everything is now together. Not sure what's going on with my colors here, but they are indeed next to each other on the same row. All right, flex row. We're going to do the same thing that we did up here. We're going to create some spacing width. Not sure why this width is not taking effect.
You're missing a PX.
PX. Ah, thank you. Yes, units matter. So I was mentioning pixels. All right, so these are our buddies right here. I actually want to make those a fixed width because notice that these columns do not shrink. If I squish this, notice that those columns effectively stay the same until you reach some minimal height. I'm not going to worry about that responsiveness. For the most part, they have a fixed size, so I'm just going to ballpark it. If my overall width is 800, I'm going to say, maybe this one is, I don't know, 550, and this might be 250 or something like that. Let's add those in there. So we've got to give these IDs. ID will be main box. This can be extra box. All right, let's continue on adding more styling. Main profile box. And now I know some of you guys may have chosen to use Bootstrap, which is great. It's really good to be comfortable with Bootstrap. But I feel like doing it all manually gives you more practice, more knowledge of CSS properties. So main profile box will have a width, let's say, what did we say, 550 pixels, units. And then we'll have our extra info box. Extra info box. This will be 250. And then what else we want to do here? We want to, let's see how that looks. Always on one. All right, that didn't change anything. Let's add, what do you want here?
You have a hashtag under the div. If you look at div under the profile on the left side.
Thank you. All right, there we go. So notice that now they have the spacing. We could actually give them color so we could see them better. So background color, deep pink, and background color. Go with Dodger blue.
On line 36 in your HTML, I think you need quotes around your ID.
Yep, indeed. All right, there we go. So we have our two columns kind of coming into place here. We might want some, spacing between them because there's some spacing here. So let's try to accomplish that. What if we just added a margin to one of these? Margin, go margin right, and let's add maybe 10 pixels. Okay, so this purple area right here, hopefully that's easy to see, will be my actual space. All right, so let's go with our main profile. Main profile has boxes in them. So there's header box, there's about box, featured, activity. Let's create a few of them. I'm not going to create, all of them. Let's create this main one and then maybe a couple others just to see them displayed. So I'm going to go in my main profile, create more boxes. It's all about boxes here. So div, this will be my profile header. I'm going to have another div. We'll call this my about me. And then let's have one more. I'm not even sure what goes down here. Let's say other profile stuff. See how that looks. Okay, there we go. We're getting these down here. Let's give them actually a class. So I'm going to apply something to all of them. So we'll say class inner box. I'm going to apply that to all of these because they're going to all look sort of similar. Again, there might be some differences. And then now that we have a class, how do I create a class selector? Anyone?
Dot.
Dot.
Yep. So again, we use hashtags for ID selectors, but now that I have a class definition, I need to use the dot and then the class name, which is inner box. And then let's give some styling to that. So I think background color white makes most sense right now. What else do I want to do? Let's add some margin, because again, these boxes definitely have margin. So margin, let's add 10 pixels. Okay, so notice that these white boxes have some nice spacing. That's looking good. What else do we need to do here? All right, let's do something else. Maybe you can, not too important, but notice that these corners are rounded. So each one of these boxes have the same kind of styling, the rounded corner. So we should be able to do that with anyone happen to know?
That radius?
Yep, there's a border radius property. Again, if you don't know, you can, this is what Googling is all for, right? There's so many properties, there's no way to memorize all of them. But the more you use them, the more comfortable you'll get with them. So let's try 4 pixels. Hopefully that's not too round. That looks close, I think. Yeah, I think that's close enough. Maybe let's make it 6. I don't know exactly what we're going for here. That's a little too round, I think, right? Yeah, I think 4 was good. We got overshot it there, so we'll go with 4. And then let's add some more stuff here. So let's say my name is Bill Gates. I'm very rich. I founded Microsoft. And I like donuts. All right, that's gonna be his about me. Nothing too interesting. Actually want to make that a little longer. I also like to play video games, and I don't like to be on Facebook. Not the best intro. Hopefully your intro on your LinkedIn's are better. But all right, that's just about me. A couple lines here. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but one thing I'm noticing here, this font is not doing it for me. So looking at this, let's try to pick a somewhat better font. So I'm just going to go to my body and apply a font. As Raphael mentioned yesterday, textual properties do kind of trickle down to every child element. So in this case, we only set the font in the top level box, which is body. Let's go with Trebuchet. That work? Okay, I'm actually gonna show you guys something, maybe not too important, but something that you can definitely do. Let's say links in official fonts. Let's see if we can find this. Source sans. So if you go to Google Fonts, let's see if we can find something that looks like it or is that font. So there's Google Fonts. This allows you to link or incorporate fonts into your web pages. So we had Source sans. All right, there we go. Source sans Pro. I believe this is the exact font that LinkedIn is using. So if I want to actually use this, let's see if it will allow me. Is this something I gotta pay for? License. All right, should be free. So if I want to link
In the
this,
top right corner.
oh, what was that?
I was just saying there's a download family button. I don't know if you need to download or that you're just trying to link direct.
Yeah, so usually you don't need to download it. I'm actually thrown off by this because usually they should provide you with the CSS. Does anyone know if this is maybe particular for this font? Let's see.
On the right, it says select this style.
On the right. Oh, like this. I see. Gotcha. Thanks. So let's go back to, what was it? Source sans. There we go. Let's go with this little boulder, like 300. Okay, so when you click select the style, thank you, whoever that was, they actually give you the CSS that you need to link to. So here, I'm going to copy these links. I'm going to dump that into my HTML file. So again, I'm linking to other CSS files. You can link to multiple CSS files within your document. So I'm going to select that, go back to my HTML, and dump that link in my head section. All right, so I just copied exactly what they gave me. I'm not modifying anything. But essentially, I'm applying a style sheet right here. I'm not sure what this pre-connect stuff is, but they told me to include it. So I'm just going to follow orders. But now that we have this, we should be able to use this font family. I'm just going to copy that font family. Again, CSS rules to specify families. Go to my styling, and here I can drop in what I want. All right, so let's see if that actually applied. Okay, cool. Notice that my font looks different. If you guys want to just see that quickly, if I take font family out, notice we're in that Times New Roman, not the best font. I'm not sure why this is a standard font, but we add that in, and now we can use Source Sans Pro, which I believe is the official LinkedIn font.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep.
So is there, I know there's like an order of precedence when you're like going internally within CSS and HTML. When you're taking elements from like different websites, is there some sort of order of precedence there?
When you say order of precedence, are you referring to how I stack these?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, whatever comes last gets precedence. So the reason I chose to put my font CSS above my personal one is so that if I want to override anything, my style sheet will override anything coming from here. So again, that's totally up to you. Usually though, you want to have that control. So, if I want to mess with something about this font family, I should be able to with my CSS style. Yeah, so there is precedence. And if there's a tie between two conflicting styles, the one that comes last gets it. Yep, good question. All right, let's continue on. We probably need to wrap up soon, but the hardest part for me when I did this challenge was this profile box. So let's try to accomplish that. I'm probably not gonna get to icons right now, but hopefully you guys can imagine what the icons will look like. Let's try to get this profile box here. So this profile box gets a little complicated, but the first thing I'm seeing, if I want to draw, if it'll let me go orange again. All right, in this profile box, this box right here, I see further boxes. And it's all about those inner boxes. So here, this is one box. It looks like a background splash image. And then there's a second box. Put that in blue. The second box is this stuff down here, actual, profile headers. And then there's gonna be a question, and I'm not gonna answer that right now, but this profile picture kind of goes between two of those boxes. So we're gonna have to figure out how to accomplish that, but we're gonna save that for last because that is probably the hardest part, at least for me, when I was doing this challenge. So let's focus on this. We have two boxes, the green and blue box. Let's create those. So let's go to the wrong one. Clear my drawings. Okay, so we're in our profile header. This has 2 boxes in them. Let me div here. This is going to be background splash, and then another div. That's going to be profile header. All right, let's actually give these IDs because I'm going to be targeting them. This will be background splash, and this will be, let's call that profile. Again, you don't have to always append it with box. I'm just doing that because I'm trying to be consistent. But usually, this is imply that we're creating boxes. I decided to stick with this naming convention. But again, you usually won't see that. It's just extra text that you don't need there. All right, so we have background slash profile header. All right, so that's what we have here. Let's actually find a quick image just so I want to see this visually. So let's say donuts background image. All right, let's go with this one. Looks nice. There we go. There it is. I'm going to, it's kind of a large image, but hopefully that's fine. Click on it. Oops. All right, let's get that. Nope, I want to download. Let's just grab the URL from here. Copy image address. And then I'm going to use that in my HTML. So this will be an image tag. And then src will be what I just copied. And then we usually want an alt. Alt will be donuts. All right, let's see how that looks. Okay, that is way too large. That is quite large. So notice that it actually goes behind my other column. And this is an issue with something called overflow. So this image, it's like, I think the width of it was like 3,000 pixels. It is overflowing the contents of this column. So there's a few ways to handle this. We could try stretching it. So let's say stretch image to fit HTML. Object fits. All right. You can use this for image or videos. Object fit property is used to specify how an image should be resized. All right, so we set a height and width. Maybe that's the way we want to go. Let's do a width. So width is going to be, I think, 100%. Let's see if that changes anything. So this is inner box. This is background splash box. Again, we have a lot of styles we've got here, so it can get quite cumbersome or tedious to create all these styles. Background splash box. Let's give it a width. That width, I want to be 100%. What this is saying, it should take on 100% of the parental width. Does that change anything? That does not. Okay, let's read on. So width, object cover. All right, so there's a few values for object fits. This is default. Image is resized to fill the given dimensions necessary. The image will be stretched. Contain, cover, none, scale down. Not sure if this is what I want. Let's try contain, see if that does anything. Object fits, contain. Does that do anything for me? Nope, still large. Make this 550 pixels. All right, this doesn't seem to be doing it. Oh, so I'm targeting the div, not the image. That is my bad. So let's give this an ID. Let's say this ID will be BG pick. So here I want to target BG pick. Let's call that image. Image pick. That was my fault. So I want to target the image, not the surrounding div. Okay, there we go. So I changed the width to 550. What if I make that 100%? That should take on 100% of the parent's width. All right, there we go. So notice that it fits perfectly within that div. Again, I target the image and I set width to 100%. So that's 100% is saying whatever space my parent is allotting for me, I'm taking all of it. I don't think I need this contain actually. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, that's fine. One thing to notice here, notice how I rounded my corners here, right? I want all my boxes to have rounded corners. However, these are pointy up here because of the image. Again, this is a problem with overflow, as in the image is overflowing the contents there. So the quick way to fix this would be if I go to my inner box, there's an overflow property, and then you can set it to auto, hidden, scroll. I want hidden, as in I don't want extra space to be displayed. So if I do that, notice that my corners are now rounded. That's saying anything that overflows this inner box should just be automatically cropped. So I have rounded corners. Again, might be kind of hard to see because they're not super round, but take my word for it, we no longer have pointy corners. Does that actually show up? Thumbs down, thumbs up. All right, cool. All right, so I think we're making progress. I know we've been going a little long. Let's try to finish up this box, and I'll kind of leave the rest for you guys to work on your own, or we could tackle this during stand down. So I have donuts. I need to crop it, right? I don't want this tall. I want something that's maybe 100 pixels, 150. So let's actually crop that image. Let's go with height. Let's actually stretch it is the question. 150 pixels. Great, that did stretch it. Maybe this is where we want to do objects fits and fill. Nope. How to crop? Oh, I know what I can do. What if I just crop the parent? So if I do background slash. All right, so I'm targeting the parent. I'm just going to cut the parent down and see if that affects it. Slash box. We'll say the height of this will be 150. All right, so I'm not changing the image, but I'm changing the parent, how tall the parent is. Will that crop it? There we go. So notice it got cropped. It's no longer stretched. Again, this still looks kind of tall. All right, so that's 150. Let's go with 100. Okay, that looks better. But notice I'm overflowing again. It's going into my profile header, which is not what I want. So overflow hidden. But taking care of that. Do I need another overflow hidden here? Not sure. Yeah, there we go. So again, the image was overflowing that box. So the default is show everything as is. Overflow hidden says crop everything that fits outside of the parent, because the parent wants to contain that part. So overflow hidden will constrain the image and crop out anything that's overflowing the bounds of this box. All right, so we have profile header to do. Let's take a look at what we need. We need like a name, title. We can do that probably pretty quickly. So where are we here? So we have our image box here. We have a profile box. Let's just add a paragraph. Let's say our name is Bill Gates. And then we have a smaller section here. This will be some I'm an important person. And then what else do we have down here? Location. So we'll say Seattle, Washington. You guys get the idea here. We're going to need to apply some quick styling. So I'll give this an ID. Say headline. Let's actually make this a H1. So maybe H2. I want to get overzealous H2. And then ID will be location. Oops, I did the hashtag again. This is a common mistake. Apparently I'm making it unintentionally, but your ID and class names don't need to have the dot or hashtag respectively. You don't need the hash or dot respectively in the name. You only need them for the selector. In this case, my ID is headline. Let's set font color. I think it's kind of grayed out. So we'll go with 333. That'll be like a dark gray. And then we also have location. And I think the font was a little smaller for both of these. Location, color for this will be a little less darker, 6666. And then font size, let's go with small. And then font size can be smaller. Okie dokes, let's take a look. That's not what I created. That's what I created. All right, so we got, smaller font. looking good. Notice that there's a bunch of margin here. So if you want to crop out that margin, this is where we can apply a class and go, let's say class equals no margin. I'm going to apply that to all of these. And then to target that class, we use the dot, no margin. And then I want to say margin 0 pixels. Again, by default, headers like H1, H2, and paragraphs, they have a built-in margin. So that's why I need to get rid of it. All right, there we go. Bill Gates, I'm an important person, Seattle, Washington. Let's hit the home stretch. Notice there's some padding here, right, at the very edge. So I'm going to add padding to this. That's going to be in my inner box here, but I don't want it. I probably want that for every inner box. So I'll do that. Sure. Padding. Add that next to margin. Padding will be 10 pixels. And then take a look at this. Okay, looks good. Looks like I don't want the padding for this. So a little trickier. So all these boxes have padding except for this. I'm just going to do it the quickest way I know how by changing this to profile box. I guess inner box, and then we'll have padded box down here.
If you go back and just with the image, change it for MPIC, I tag, can't you just put padding 0 in there? Won't that override the top level one?
So that's a good thought. So the question was, can we just put padding for the image pick? This is only going to be padding with respect to its parent. So it's contained within background splash. So background splash is the item that has the padding here. Or in this case, it's padding inside this biggest box, this white box. So this padding is coming from like 2 levels up or 3 levels up. So we actually don't want padding for everything here. So it's going to get a little tricky, and I'll accomplish that by adding a new padded box class, which every other class, every other box will use this padded box. I'm going to apply the padding to this 10 pixels, and I'm not going to apply that to my inner box. The reason being is because I have inner box here, and I don't want this box to be padded necessarily, right? So if I do this, notice that we still have the padding for all of these because they have padded box in addition to inner box. This no longer has padding, but I do want padding for this portion. So this is where, again, reusability comes into play. I can apply, where is this? Inner box right here. I lost my bearings there. All right, this should not be inner box, this should be padded box. All right, so now I get the padding there. Class. All right, so I have the padding here, which is the same padding that's being used by the inner boxes. So again, reusability, creating more like modules. We talked about this in Python. You don't want to create a giant, class that has every single property you want. You want to break that up so you can apply them individually as needed. All right, so we got this. Our last challenge, let's hopefully do this in the next 5 minutes or so, is getting that profile pic, right? So we have Bill Gates, we have the title, looks sort of similar to what we have going on here. I think I'm zoomed in a little bit too much here, but I would say this looks close. I'm obviously missing the icons, but this profile pic, how do we accomplish that? Well, let's find a picture of Bill Gates first. Bill Gates. Can I just copy the one from here, maybe? All right, I don't want a circle image. I actually want a square image. So for Bill Gates image, it looks like a good pick. I guess he has a Facebook pic too. Let's use this one. So we're going to copy this URL, copy image address, and then that's going to be my profile pic. So let's add an image on top here. Image source will be what I just copied. That's kind of a long, ugly URL, but I'll live with it. This is profile. Call it headshot. Okay, we have our image. Let's see how that looks. Okay, it's kind of large. We want to constrain the size, so we could apply sizing here. Again, we could apply a width here, and that works as well. Or you could do it in CSS. In this case, I'm going to do it just in HTML. Width is an attribute for the image tag, so we should be able to do it here. I think it's like 100 by 100 maybe. See if that fixes it. Okay, that looks about the size I want it. But I have a square here. I actually want it to be round. So this is where we want to use CSS. I'm going to add an ID here. Let's call that headshot, image headshot. And then I'll put that down here. As I'm typing this out, any questions from anything we did? I know we've been doing a lot. Again, just going box by box and trying to figure out the styling for each of those. All right, I want border radius, and that's going to be 100%. It's going to be the whole tamale. We don't want any edges. There we go. Got that circle. Cool. Okay. Well, there's a problem here, right? This is taking up vertical space because it lives in this box down here that I'm framing, right? We want it to actually show up mostly or partially on the background splash image. So this is the trickiest part of CSS. I always had to mess with it. We're going to use something called relative positioning. So this image shouldn't just take up the space here. We want to kind of float it on top of this. So to do this, we need to change a couple things. So this is my image headshot. We're going to add a position and say we go relative. Relative means it's going to be relative to where it should be located. So right now, doing this does not change a single thing. It's still going to be where it was before. The reason is we need to change its parent to have some sort of positioning. So instead of static, which is the default, I want to go to padded box. Let's actually give us an ID. Say ID will equal, I'm losing track of all these boxes. So we have background splash, we have profile info box. All right, so that's ID that I want to target. Let's put it in this right here. All right, so now we need to set the position of this. So position, we could do relative. And now this should give us control over this. Maybe I think I skipped a step, so let's take that out. Position relative. So now if you want to mess around with the top, let's say the top should be -80. See if that changed anything. All right, notice nothing changed. I actually lost my roundness. Oops, because I forgot my semicolon. All right, notice it actually moved. So it looks like I don't actually need to mess with the parent, but I'm actually losing space here, right? Because that's something. So we need to use something called absolute. Let's actually Google this. So CSS position absolute. Let's go with position. And the problem here is that the image still is owning some space. It's saying, hey, I normally belong here. I'm going to eat up that space. So let's go to CSS layout. So these are the 5 types of positions you can have. Static is a default, as in just go where the browser tells you to. Relative is adjust it from where you should be. Fixed is basically anywhere based on the screen, always put it there. No matter the scroll position, no matter anything else, fixed is going to say, stick this element on the screen at this exact location. Absolute, though, does something differently. And this is, I think, as Raphael mentioned, probably the hardest to understand. It's positioned relative to the nearest position ancestor. All right, this is the key here. Absolute position elements are removed from the normal flow. What this means is that it's not going to take up the original space it should have. So, excuse me, instead of using relative, we want to use absolute here. So if I change this to absolute. All right, notice that Bill Gates' head kind of got cut off here. The reason is, if we read the documentation, is that this is position relative to the nearest position ancestor. What position ancestor means is something that is not using static. So everything by default uses static. So we need something above this image to actually have some relative positioning. So that is why I was adding in this line right here. We're going to add position relative. So now this is a position ancestor. So when we do image, when we do the image headshot and do absolute, this -80 is going to reference the position within this. So let's see how this looks. All right, there we go. Bill Gates kind of got back. Again, we're cutting off his name, so we need to adjust padding a little bit. But I think we accomplished essentially what we wanted here. Looks like there's a white border. We can do that easily. So we go to image headshot. Let's add a border. Border will be white, maybe 4 pixels wide and solid. All right, we got a border. Great. Last thing I want to do is adjust this. So we don't want the name to be cut off, obviously. So again, we have a default padding of 4, but I need to add more padding here, it looks like. So to do that, I'm going to find that box, which is profile info box. And then profile info box, let's add more padding. So instead of taking the default 4 pixels, let's make it, I don't know, 20 pixels. Only for the top. I don't want 20 pixels everywhere. So profile top. So what this should do is going to override only the top part, but the left, right, and bottom should still have 4 pixels because that 4 pixels is coming from padded box, or sorry, 10 is what we're using there. So maybe I need 20. All right, we need a little more. Let's go with 30. And there we go. All right, so a lot of fiddling. Again, just trying to take it one box at a time. But look, this looks pretty close to what I'd want. Again, the sizing might be a little off. Looks like a little too wide. Maybe shrink it. Does that look close? Yeah, I think we're close, obviously. So extra info would just be more of these boxes. I'm not going to go through that because there's not too much interesting there. But again, this would just have boxes on top of each other similar to this. And again, the heights of these are independent of the heights of each of these boxes. These are separated into columns. All right, the last thing I want to do, maybe is take out some of these coloring so we look sort of close to what we want, and then we'll wrap this up. Any questions while I remove the coloring from each of these boxes?
Yeah, Ankur, I got a couple questions here.
Please ask.
Mike Chage.
Yep, go for it.
When somebody says front end, can you give me 1 second? I'm sorry. When somebody says front end developer, is this what they're talking about, like the CSS and like the look, or are they talking about like the JavaScript part that goes with that? Or like, is this more of a, like what a designer would do, or, you know, like messing with the CSS and the HTML? I'm just kind of curious as I think about like front end, back end type stuff.
Excellent question. So yes, a front end designer would strictly be working with CSS and HTML. When we talk about front end developer, that is where the JavaScript portion comes in, because you're still working on logic. You're creating, you're coding in JavaScript. So front end developers both work with styling and logic for the web page. A backend developer, which we'll get into next week, is working with a database and serving up data. You don't really care about any front end. You're saying, hey, I have a bunch of data that your website's going to need. You're working with the server, database, and all that jazz behind the scenes. So that's a backend developer. Front end developer is again oriented towards the front end, which is your web page.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this looks like, I think I screwed something up. Main profile box if I want. So background color, some beige color. I don't know what this would look like. A. That beige. I don't know. Okay. I'm not going to mess with colors too much, but hopefully profile box, content box if I want. All right, let me just do this last thing. I promise we'll wrap up. All right, background color, wheat. Okay, so looking sort of similar to this. I think I need the background color here, not here, but you guys get the idea. All right, any other questions out there?
I have one.
Yep.
How do you make decisions about, putting a style inline as opposed to putting it in your CSS file? Because I noticed you did that with the picture, but like, what do you think about when you make those kinds of decisions?
Yeah, so styling, again, for CSS, I always do an external style sheet. I think the question here is, why did I choose to use width here? Again, that was just my decision. Usually all the styling I'd put into CSS. Width is just a built-in property for the image tag. So you can leverage that if you don't need to create an ID. In this case, since I have an ID, I could easily move that into my CSS. So the question is the decision. I'd say try to be consistent. So maybe I kind of broke my rule here and added this in. I just wanted to change it up and show, again, you don't have to use CSS, especially for images. They have some attributes, but yeah, it should work the same. So I go to image headshot. Yeah, so I would say try to keep all your styling in your CSS. So I guess that was my bad for kind of breaking my convention there.
Yeah, you will always, in the real world, you'll always have an external style sheet.
Okay, dokes. Again, this was a fun challenge for me and just kind of getting more familiar with CSS. Again, doing some tricky stuff like absolute positioning. Definitely a good experience to go through that. Okay, hopefully your LinkedIn pages will end up looking better than mine here. Obviously, I have some icons to add, icon up here, but that should be pretty trivial. So I'll probably do that on my own time. All right, with that, it is 10:27. Let me stop recording here.